And Edwin and I first met at Harvard. We had the infamous Peter Eisenman studio together. This becomes a bonding experience for anybody who goes through this torture. And Edwin might have forgotten, but we actually had Christmas dinner together at a professor's house.
We did, yeah.
Because we were a few of those people who were actually working in studio Christmas Day before our thesis project come January, whatever it was, 1st or 2nd. Edwin has been involved in many, if not most, of the most important projects that Gary has done over the last several years. And I've watched his career with great interest and some degree of pride as well. And it's he and I have had occasion to collaborate a few times, and every time I've found it's been a great learning experience to learn from him and also learn from what he's learned from the Gary Studio about how to design. And so I'm looking forward to this lecture every bit as much as you are. So with that, I'll hand over things to Edwin Chan.
Where am I supposed to stand?
Might as well be there.
Okay, I can be anywhere?
You can be anywhere.
Oh my, shit.
You can be virtual if you want.
I could be? All right. Well, thanks, Cameron, for having me. And actually, more importantly, I was just saying to Cameron earlier, for rescuing me from the office, because like today I really needed to be rescued. It was like one of those kind of days. I might be coughing and puffing a little bit during the lecture, so you have to pardon me. I was sitting on a plane for 5 hours next to a sick person, and I always sort of catch something when you do that. But anyways, I'm very, very happy to be here and have this opportunity to show you something. When Cameron first asked me to do this, I guess my first question was like, can we not talk about the Guggenheim in Bilbao? Because it's like, I feel like that's one of those sort of buildings, if you guys are, I'm assuming that everybody's sort of so tired of the building and you don't really want to see any more of it or hear any more of it. But however, I figured that the story that I'm going to actually tell you started somewhere around the time when Bilbao was being finished. I don't know if this is the right height or not, but anyway, so it was around 1996, and Frank came to me and he said, well, you know, we have a new project. We got to design this new project. He was very excited, and I said, well, what is it? And he goes, well, you know, it's a small cafeteria for the publication company Condé Nast. Now, for some of you people who don't know Condé Nast is actually one of the largest publication, how do you say that, people who publish magazines in this country and in the world, in fact. And they publish things like, you know, Architectural Digest, you know, House and Garden, and Gourmet, or Food and Wine. So this is a variety of stuff that basically defines people's lifestyle and stuff. And Frank said what we needed to do is a little cafeteria for these people to have lunch in, and it's a very small project. And I said to Frank, well, you know, we just finished this big museum, and, you know, it's a big, prestigious project in a, you know, exotic location. Why are we doing a little dipshit interior project for these people? And Frank said, well, you know, you see, because the good ideas always come from small projects, and they give you more opportunities to experiment. You find out when you work on it. So reluctantly, we started to work on the project, and we agreed to do it. For some of you who might not be familiar with what we do, we work very much in model forms, and when we start a project, that's the first thing we do is to make a lot of models. So for the cafeteria, the thing we do is that we decided to, in order to figure out what these people want, we decided to make a bunch of sketch models just to figure out and have a better feeling for these people. This model here is one of the first models we made. And it's an interesting model because it suggests to us they like this model very much, and we found out from this model that they like the idea that in the cafeteria, perhaps each one of these things represent a little booth where you can sit around, and you see these people sort of congregate this kind of way. And they like the idea of, instead of sitting in a bunch of loose chairs, they like the idea of this kind of a booth seating arrangement, because this light is not flashing on me all the time. Is that possible? It is? Oh, okay. Should I get out of the way? Okay. They like the idea of sitting around these booths because it gives them a much more sort of intimate feeling. And the idea that it's not a bunch of loose chairs takes away the feeling of the cafeteria and brings it into a more kind of private setting. Then we made a slightly different model, and this is suggesting, we thought, since it's sort of like a publication facility, is their business, we thought that it might be kind of interesting to create maybe some glass partitions, and you can sort of put their headlines and their quotes and stuff like that on it. And this can potentially be a kind of a changing environment. But actually, really, more importantly, we just sort of like this kind of thing. We saw it in the magazine. We thought we'd sort of do it and just to see what they like it or not. However, what we found out from this model is that they also like the idea, not specifically to the graphics quality of these sort of glass panels, but they like the idea of these big sort of glass panels that starts to define very small, separate sort of areas for them. Because what that's suggesting is you can perhaps have a small party in each one of these glass areas. So this area here could be isolated from this area, even though you have the visual connection. And each one of these glass booths, so we say, allow them the privacy, but at the same time a kind of transparency and maintain the openness of the space. So they like that aspect of it. They didn't particularly care for the graphics so much. So with that idea, we started to explore like what the space could be like. And one of the images that we sort of looked at, it just happens to be an image that we like, is of course the Arena Chapel in Italy by Giotto. We like it mostly because we like the blue in the sky, in the ceiling. We came across that image, and we thought that this kind of a feeling of sitting underneath the sky, perhaps, of a ceiling like that would be able to give the cafeteria some kind of a unique character that may be a contrast to the exterior where the cafeteria is located, which happens to be New York City, which has a lot of sort of very busy, chaotic activity on the outside of the building. Meanwhile, we were doing some research on one of our favorite material, which happens to be titanium, and we were experimenting with some kind of a process that would give the titanium color through anodizing. Anodizing, it means that putting the titanium panel in acid and passing electric current in it. And by controlling the acidity of the solution and the amount of electric current, you can change the color of the titanium. And in this case, we were able to achieve a blue that we thought might be appropriate for the cafeteria. We then looked at another image that we thought would be interesting. In this case, we came across some images of perhaps some ice. Somebody's phone's ringing. Of sort of like these chunks of ice that's sort of melting. And we thought that if you would imagine designing or articulating the separate glass enclosed areas as a chunk of ice, so that this cafeteria here would be sitting underneath, say, a blue skies with chunks of ice sort of melting, and you would occupy some of these spaces. It would be a very, very unique kind of experience for this place, as distinct, as I mentioned, from the New York City activities that are surrounding this place. So with this kind of I had the slide in upside down. We started to develop actually a floor plan that we hope would, can the light stop flashing somehow? We started to develop a floor plan in an encore performance that would start to reflect the idea of the layout, which is we created a bunch of sort of booths that sort of sit around the space here, as sort of we found out from the first model. And then in the middle of this space, we created sort of a bunch of sort of a couple of glass islands, if you will, that would be these forms here. And if you sort of turn your head upside down, you might be able to see what some of these things would look like. But then if you don't want to turn your head upside down, you'll be able to see it right side up in a configuration that is like that. Again, now with the booths sort of organized somewhat all the way around the perimeter, and they would be surrounded by these blue titanium perimeter here. In the middle would be a glass island that is articulated like that. Here's another shot of the space here. And you could see here there's on the ceiling, there's a wood soffit that sort of ties all the elements sort of together. And within the glass island here is also a series of booths where they can sit, so that, for example, you imagine the house and garden people can sit in this booth, and the wine and dine or whatever connoisseur people would sit over there, so on and so forth. So then we like to jump scale in the way we study these forms. So we started to develop that particular idea in a slightly larger scale model here. You see a view through into our large scale model, and we try to put the Condé Nast type people in this model so that it looks contextual. But then we realize that, of course, if you all look like this Condé Nast model, they probably wouldn't have to eat in this cafeteria at all. Now, then the problem becomes how to make these titanium shapes and how to make the glass shape. So what I would do is, first of all, I would explain to you how each one of these titanium shapes are being made and fabricated. So here you see these are the titanium forms as they're being developed in our large-scale model. And we like to start the development of these things by, again, looking back at what we were working on. And at that time, of course, it was convenient for us to look at Bilbao as a starting point. And this particular piece here, for some of you guys who are familiar with the Guggenheim image, is a piece of the museum that we call the boot, which is like this kind of a form that sits here. So for the Condé Nast project, we sort of, in some ways, we appropriated this form and we articulated it differently, and we developed this particular kind of formal language. Now this is an image of Bilbao here. Now the thing that is to keep in mind that makes Condé Nast different is, of course, in Bilbao, the boot here is about, say, 90 feet tall in the monumental scale, whereas in Condé Nast, the cafeteria, we are only dealing with forms that are within the scale of a room. So that poses some challenge and immediate differences between two types of kind of formal execution. In Bilbao, because the scale of the form is so big, one could actually, if you look at this thing, articulate the piece and construct this piece as a series of straight stick elements. And what I mean by that is that even though the surface is curved, you can actually break it down into segments of straight lines, like it's articulated here. So this thing is essentially a warped grid structure of some sort. There's no curved structure here in its primary structure, the structure that are actually supporting the piece. So here you could see the boot piece being in construction, and you can see even though the overall reading and the experience of this piece is a gigantic curved surface, each segment that you see here is actually straight. And here you see how the whole thing is being covered, and even these little lines here, they're used they're used for attachment of the metal panels here, as you can see. And finally, the metal panel is complete. Now, in Condé Nast, because the scale is different, we had to look at a different way of making the piece. So one of the things that we looked at is my little baby dinosaur here. If you look at this, what is interesting about this thing, and you've all seen this before, is that by making a series of ribs like this differently, you could actually start to suggest a form that is fairly complicated. As you can see, it's an organic form that is actually suggested by a series of these kind of ribs. So with this particular idea, we thought that the Condé Nast columns or the blue titanium forms could be made the similar way. So here is a model that explains how that idea could be translated into making those forms. So a series of these floor plates could be cut that suggest the form of the column, and on top of these kind of plates, you can attach the blue titanium, and and once you lay the titanium on top of the plate, it automatically suggests the form. So we know that is the procedure that we could apply. So then we very quickly, for some of you guys who are not familiar with what we do in terms of the digital technology, we very quickly digitize from our big model all the shapes that we've developed. And then from there, you can see Lee here is starting to articulate and organize the information in the computer into the forms and the floor plates that I described to you earlier. So that then those forms, you can see now, they can start to break up the shapes of the blue titanium into these parallel forms, as you can see. And then from this kind of information, and you can start to make a larger scale mock-up with these ribs. This is a full-size piece of one of those things. And in fact, we have to build it in our studio here. We had to do this to test if that idea would work. You see here that all our wood shop is we like to do this stuff in our office. So with each one of these ribs, imagine it's one of those things of the dinosaur, and then when you lay the metal on top and attach it, you should supposedly follow the shape. Now, one thing that I should also mention is that in terms of in the design of the cafeteria, acoustic is actually an important issue. So one of the things that we decided to do is to actually perforate the metal. And by perforating the metal, we were able to put an acoustically absorptive material behind the titanium shapes so that the cafeteria itself could be relatively quiet, so that, because within the Condé Nast organization, each one of these magazines are highly competitive. You don't want the people in Architectural Digest to hear what House and Garden have in mind for the next month. It's an interesting idea. So that the acoustically absorptive material with the perforated surfaces will allow the privacy to be contained within each department and within the cafeteria. The other thing that we needed to do, of course, is to design these booths and make sure that these booths would sit very comfortably within embed themselves very comfortably inside those titanium column shapes. So this is one of the booths in fabrication here as a mock-up. And of course, we have to sit on it to make sure that your back is straight, you have good posture while you're sitting there. And then, of course, that particular idea would be put inside these columns again. We will analyze it digitally to make sure that everything fits. And then from there, we would build a full-size mock-up here. Now, the other thing that I should also mention is when you do a little project like this, the advantage is that you can actually build the whole thing twice. And what I mean by that is that we decided that instead of building this thing on site in New York City, we would actually build it in Venice, in Italy, that is. And then while the whole thing, we rented a warehouse in Venice, Italy, we built the whole thing, and then we would disassemble the whole piece, make sure that everything fits, transport them to New York, and reassemble them. It actually has proven to be financially more feasible than building the whole thing once in New York. It's just like not having to deal with the New York Mafia, that is. So anyway, so here is the mock-up and the real thing being fabricated in Venice. You can see the booth is here, perforated panels slowly layered, and then some of these grids going up. Another layer of the metal going on. This is the underskin of one of those titanium columns. And then finally, this is just a panorama of the entire cafeteria under construction in Venice before it got assembled. Here you can see some more of this. This is also in Venice, inside the warehouse. And then finally, the whole thing is taken apart now, is being assembled in New York, as you can see, with the blue titanium surfaces in place. Now, we turn our attention to the problem of the glass. This is another building that we did earlier, before the Condé Nast cafeteria. This is, some of you may recognize this, but for those of you who do not, this is a glass tower that we have just, I guess we finished a couple of years ago in Prague, in Czechoslovakia. And we call this tower Ginger. And I just wanted to share with you how we made the glass in Ginger for 1 second. So you have to bear with me before we go into the glass in Condé Nast. So with Ginger, the way that the glass was made is that we, again, using our computer technology, we were able to sort of digitize the shape and create a computer model of Ginger. Oops, sorry, I pushed the wrong button. And then from the digital model, we were able to again fabricate the entire glass tower, in this case horizontally inside a warehouse. So if you tilt your head this way, you can kind of see the glass tower or Ginger leaning or sleeping on the floor of the warehouse. And then same thing, now Ginger is being erected here in Prague. Now it's standing up vertically with all those curved elements in place. And then finally the layer of the glass going on to Ginger. Now again, the trick of Ginger is the same as the bit in Bilbao in the sense that because of the large scale of these curves, you could actually make or conceive of each piece of the glass panel with straight piece segments of glass. So even though this shape has this voluptuous curve, you can actually, if you look a little closer, you can see the glass actually facets ever so slightly to design this curve, and each piece of glass is actually straight. There is no curved glass here. And a similar kind of strategy is also true for Bilbao in the sense that you can see how the glass surfaces in Bilbao also curves a little bit just to acknowledge the curvature of the titanium surfaces. But again, I want to emphasize that there is no curved glass in Bilbao because each one of these panels are actually segmented with straight pieces of glass, and you can see how you sort of cheat it. This kind of overlapping allows you to cheat. So this glass tower in Bilbao, in the Bilbao atrium, is again a series of overlapping segmented straight pieces of glass. In Condé Nast, however, that particular approach does not work because, again, the small scale of this piece as an interior does not allow us to segment the glass. Each one of these pieces of glass has to be considered as a custom piece that is curved to our specification. So we have to invent a new process that will allow us to curve this glass when there are over 70 pieces of these things. And this is sort of a model that we made that tells us how we want the glass to feel like, and each one is a custom piece because it will look good next to her. So with our CATIA database, we start to put each piece of the glass in the model. Now then we come up with an idea, which is, if you imagine, you've all seen this thing before, you put it on your face and it becomes a mold of your face. So with a CATIA, you could control the curvature of all of these pins, and if you were to reimagine that one were to design a pin bed like this, you would be able to lay the piece of glass on this mold and it would be reusable. Each one of these pins would be controlled both with the CATIA, and they would move up and down, so to speak, and it could be adjusted and controlled to represent the curvature of the 70-some pieces of custom glass, and then the glass could be put in the oven and it could be sort of slummed that way. So then we started to organize our computer effort to try to duplicate that. So this is the computer model of one piece of glass sitting on a bed, like that. And then we look all over the country to see who would be interested in fabricating the glass, and we came up with actually a company here locally in Southern California, a company called CTEC, which is basically the business is doing rapid prototyping for Boeing and for Detroit, for car bodies. So they're very excited about working with us in terms of trying to fabricate this glass thing, and this is an image of CTEC. What they're doing here, this is a gigantic, large-scale milling machine, and they're in the process of sort of milling a model for us. So you can see here now with the foam as a kind of armature, we were able to lay the glass on top of this bed, of this kind of armature thing that we have, and the glass would be shoved into this thing, which is an oven where it would be slummed. And now the glass is inside the oven here, being heated to a degree that you don't want it to get close to, and then when you pull it out of the oven, you can see how the glass is sort of slumping in a way that is hopefully consistent with our computer model. And you can see how another view of the glass. So you can see the outside courtyard of CTEC is basically a bunch of these things just sitting there, enjoying the sun while cooling off from the oven. And then you lift it from the mold, and you can see the glass takes on this own shape here. And here's a picture of my project architect, Chris, here inspecting the curvature to make sure that these glass are curved exactly the way we wanted it. Now at this point, I'd like to take a break from the glass and the titanium, talk about another aspect of the cafeteria, which is lighting. If you have all these curves, surfaces, I think that it's important for us that the lighting in the cafeteria will bring out some of the characters and complement these forms. And in our model, as a beginning to study this particular problem, we throw in a bunch of electric light bulbs into our large-scale model just to simulate, to give us a better understanding of what the cafeteria would look like with artificial light. And from that particular exercise, we identified the fact that you probably need to have an uplight component to the fixture and a downlight component to the fixture. So these are two mock-ups that we have in our office that start to test and look at these kind of options. And then with that, we started to look at ways to create a housing for the lighting fixture. So these are 3 little housing studies of these fixtures, and to see how they would look against the blue titanium. And then from there, we finally arrived at a housing that we like, and it's made out of crumbled silver paper. But we took it very seriously, and we made a real mock-up of this one being cast in stainless steel that looks just like the crumbled paper. And then here Lee, he's a stand-in of our waiter, being very happy, being sort of bashing in the glamour of the stainless steel light housing. And with that particular thing, you can only imagine what these lighting fixtures would look like inside the cafeteria. As this is now this fixture housed between the titanium column and the glass. Now we go back to the glass. So after the glass has been lifted out of the oven and is sufficiently cooled off, after Chris has inspected and approved all the curvature of the glass to match our CATIA database, looks just like that, you see. The glass will be ready for transport from California to New York. And this picture really, really makes me nervous, but apparently it's all there. So we lift it up with the forklift. Forklift would be tested with an instrument here. We call the spider. Basically, the spider is a frame that they made that will keep the glass in place while it's being placed on the truck. It's like a device for them to hold the glass. And now they finally arrived in New York, and you can see these guys all working very hard to lift the glass in place and install the glass in the space, actually. And finally, a piece of glass is installed. This is full size, the real thing. And after it's sort of been installed in place, we have to protect the glass, of course, so that just the people who are installing the titanium wouldn't run into the glass, because it wouldn't be a good thing to break these very expensive things. And then finally, this is what the glass looks like with the blue titanium in place. So now, I'm just going to show you a bunch of images of the finished cafeteria, so if you haven't seen it. So now this is just a view down the corridor with the glass and the titanium forming like a canyon type space, and all the booths are surrounding. It's an image of our model. And I always like to compare the model with the building, because I think that that's sort of like a good comparison with the lighting fixtures. Again, the model shot with all the beautiful people in it. And here is the real thing without anybody there, because they don't need to eat. Again, this is model, what it feels like to be inside a glass island here. This is the real thing. Again, model shot of the glass. You know, the reflection of the glass allows her to put some makeup on while she's walking down the cafeteria. Here is the real thing. Again, Finally, the cafeteria as you enter the main entry view. This is, again, the same view in the real building. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take questions. Quick question is, what was the square footage of the dining area and how much did it cost?
The square footage of the cafeteria is about 8,000 square feet. It seats about 200 people. I can't really tell you exactly how much the cafeteria costs because Condé Nast is not really very good at keeping track of this kind of stuff. However, I could tell you that each piece of curved glass is approximately the price of a BMW. So you can sort of figure there are about 70 pieces plus the titanium.
Also, I don't know, have you spent much time in the cafeteria in its usage?
Yes, I have, in fact.
Because I've done the same. It's crazy because it's catchy and clicky, more so than a high school cafeteria is.
But that's what they wanted. That's right. Exactly. That's sort of the jokes that I made about all these different people. Yeah.
It's absolutely true.
I know it's true. I wasn't joking. Some. Well, the thing about it, you see, the way we work is not so much, you don't start the project and say, okay, here's the big experimental idea, we want to do this. I think that what it is it's a kind of a trial and error kind of process. You start with this. When we started the project, we knew that, it might be, as I mentioned, a small project, there might be room for us to explore certain things that large projects wouldn't allow you to do, but we didn't know, I swear, that we were going to do that to the glass or to do that to the metal. I mean, but the thing is, as the project evolved, the logic of the design would automatically inform you what to do. And then at that point, you search the solution. You keep the client, I think the issue is you keep the client informed and you have this constant dialogue with the client to make sure that what you're doing is not out of bounds of what their intentions are. So it's not like we're going to go out there and you never go out there and say, okay, we're going to spend, $10 million on all this other stuff without telling the client. So every step of the way, we have to get the client's permission in order to do these kind of things.
How do you find contractors to work on these?
That's a very good question. I mean, I sort of alluded.
Why you went to Venice, for example?
Well, I mean, that's actually one of the good question in the sense that this was happening at a time in the U.S. when the economy was supposedly pretty good. And I think the normal contractors are not really that interested in doing this kind of work because if they can just kind of go and hammer up the 2x4 and do the schlock kind of suburban construction, there's no need for them to have to fuss around with this stuff. So very often now, in terms of our office, and I think that with other offices that we know as well who are interested in doing things that are slightly outside the norm of the conventional, we look at, we seek out people who are interested in playing with us, so to speak. Now, the titanium, very specifically, was done by the same people. We know these people who are the same contractor for Bilbao. And it's a very large company called Permis de Lisa, the curtain wall company, and they actually do a lot of quote-unquote schlock buildings as well all over the world. So they make a lot of money. So what they do with us, they also consider research and development. And they can afford to play with us in that kind of a way just because they have the bread and butter stuff in Singapore or wherever. Now, SeaTech is a different story. In the same way, it's similar in the sense that their bread and butter project, they have the Boeing stuff, they have the car people, so that's really where the main part of their business is, and they're very interested in breaking into architecture. In fact, right now as we speak, we are working with them on a different project. This similar kind of thing, but different. And they want to do more work with us architecturally because that's interesting for them. I mean, you imagine you deal with Detroit, so playing with us is kind of like Home Alone kind of thing. You don't do this all the time. They don't consider this to be the main part of the business. But there are people out there now we know who are very enthusiastic about trying this kind of technology because obviously the contractors who do houses, they're not interested in this at all.
Then what about city engineers or permits? And how do you find engineers who can calculate all the different stresses and,
Well, the thing, I didn't quite go into I didn't really go into the engineering of the thing, but the engineers who work with us on this, actually, they work out of Boston, and it was actually just a normal engineer. It wasn't anything like Arab or anything like that. In fact, and basically, I think we need to, a lot of it is communication. I think that part of it is the digital database allow us to communicate with the consultants in general in a much more direct kind of way, and that helps a lot.
What's your budget for time as far as design and going into fabrication and various kind of...
Well, in terms of I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but in this particular project, and that's again another reason why like small projects are, whether they're desirable or not, I don't really know. But in this case, I mentioned that we started the project in around 1996, and it was just open last year in 99. So it took us 96, 97, 98, so 3.5 years or so to complete the project.
But there's a certain chunk of that was more for concept and then part for fabrication.
Well, the way that, we started any project, and it's not just Condé Nast here, I think for any architectural project, before you begin the project, you will have to work out some kind of a schedule that is acceptable to the client. Now, in this particular case, the schedule of the project was actually driven by the completion of the headquarter building in New York. If you've been to New York, you know that they have this new high-rise building in Times Square that was just, again, recently completed around the same time that the cafeteria was completed. And the intention was that when we created the cafeteria, that would be around the same time that the building would be ready for moving in. So there was a very rigorous schedule, shall we say, that we have to hold ourselves to. And then what you do is that when you sort of, from that big picture, from moving day, then you're going to have to work your way back to establish like the important points where things need to get shipped to Italy to get fabricated, and when we need to finish our design, when we're not allowed to change things anymore, and so on and so forth.
Also, when you're working with so many custom pieces, is there any kind of warranty that you have there? In case some schmo slips and breaks one of these pieces of glass, is that something that...
Now, we wouldn't be offering a warranty. The glass would be offered by CTEC, but there will have to be some kind of a thing of that nature. Can you repeat the question again? I didn't quite understand. You mean the boobs?
Yeah, like why it was like kind of weird.
Oh, the pads? Well, the pads we like because I have to be honest with you, that's sort of like part of it is visual, part of it is touchy-feely. We tried different boobs. I didn't show you all the options of the boobs. And we had the client sat on all of them, and it turned out that we all agreed that the particular version that we saw was the one that we liked the most in terms of how it felt like to be sitting on it. I think they liked the rounded, padded, the fluted version because it gave them a better support. It was a very touchy-feely kind of thing. It was a trial and error thing. Now, we also like the thing because the lines and the different things, because it somehow intuitively we thought that we also it relates better to the surfaces of the glass and the surfaces of the metal. So it's a combination of both. I mean, I answer your question, but that was a very touchy-feely one. Because then we would make a thing, we would sit on it, and then someone would say, okay, it's too hard on my back, too soft, this and that, we have to add more foam, and then you raise it another 1/4 of an inch, and they sit on it and say, okay, all right, maybe this, but then somebody else would sit on it, and this needs to be a little longer, a little shorter. So it's like making a suit, it's a lot of tailoring.
How many clients were there? Or how many people were the client?
Oh, you mean for this? Basically, it was Cy and Victoria Newhouse, who were the head of Condé Nast Publication, and working with them, we had working as their liaison is James Truman, who is one of their editors. 3, mainly.
So I wasn't an So this kind of project is almost like an interactive project. So you've got to evolve it back and forth with your client.
I think that a lot of, if I may interject, I think that for us in our office, the way we work with a variety of projects, no matter what it is important that we have this kind of relationship with the client. I think that I would say that the Guggenheim in Bilbao is the perfect example in the sense that without our relationship with the client, that building wouldn't have been the way it turned out.
So the client actually is almost like a collaborator or a co-worker.
Absolutely, in 100%.
And it has to be somebody that what stops here kind of position.
Well, I mean, I think that the fortunate thing, or the unfortunate, depends on how you see it, is that our office is in a situation where people generally come to us because they're interested in participating in our process. And usually if they're not, we turn them down, basically.
Right. So if the glass for some reason fails,
Yeah.
then what are we going to do?
Well, we have a backup plan. We had a backup plan. And I must tell you that that was a cliffhanger, actually. And the client wasn't comfortable with the idea of the glass for the same reason. They were very nervous about his size, especially. He was worried about lawsuits and all kinds of stuff. So I think that we believe in it, in that particular idea, and that was important to us. So we spend the time and the effort to prove it to him that would work. So we said to Cy that look, you're not comfortable with it, we wouldn't do it. But on the other hand, I wanted you to give us a shot at it, and we would prove to you that it would work. And now he's very happy with it.
How thick is that glass?
The glass is very thick, and part of the reason is that it's actually laminated glass. And laminated glass, basically, you see, for tempered glass, when it breaks, it shatters. Laminated glass, when it breaks, it holds itself together. Actually, that was one of the considerations. So in case somebody runs into it, the glass wouldn't just kind of explode in front of you and start killing people.
The safety glass.
Yeah, exactly. So it is very thick, yes.
I'm curious to what extent Frank Gehry was involved in the project. Just the initial sketches, or what was his involvement? How did he delegate his ideas to the project? And it's probably an elaborate question.
Well, I think that in my case, there are two, your question sort of goes into a slightly separate area than the specifics of the project. It basically is the way the office works. There are two, besides myself, there's one other person who are project designers, and we have this relationship with Frank. And Frank is more like our studio critic, if I would put it in the context of an art school or a studio. So when we start a project, usually we would sit down like you would with, say, your critic, and we talk through it, and we throw around ideas. And then based on the initial discussion, that sort of sets the basic principles of the project. Each one of us would develop the projects, and then at certain crucial points, we would show it to the critic, and he, for example, and he would give us his opinion. He would say, it wouldn't be a question of whether he thinks he likes it or not, but it's more like a question, what a critic would say, this, but have you thought about this? This works, but this may not work. So it would be a constructive and creative dialogue until the end of the project when it's finally complete.
You're you're also supplied with visual material from Frank as well. He does draw. I mean, it's more than just a conversation, is it not?
Well, I mean, in the same way that you, as a critic, would use a piece of tracing paper to illustrate to your students or something. But you mean the scribbled sketches that he makes? Are you referring to those, or are you referring to?
A few of those around, yeah.
It depends. How do you know those were his drawings?
So I want to ask about that. So you may have your company secrets, but you actually you were an actual artist designer and did that. If you had full power, you would signature on that
I mean, that's a different kind of question, and I think that's not.
You said that Frank was a critic, meaning like arm's length away.
No, I wouldn't quite say that. I mean, it's a creative relationship. It's a dialogue, right? In the same way that I think that the way one would consider this is that I think it was also a previous question, is that when you look at the work that is finally produced, I think that one should consider that as the product of the collaboration, at least in my mind, of the collaboration of many people. Frank being one of the many people. I would say that the outcome of Condé Nast, let's just say if I were to put myself outside of the equation, I think that Cy and Victoria and James's input were as important as Frank's input on the outcome of the project. In the same way that I think that, say, the people who are actually making the glass or the people who are making the titanium, their input in the project were as important as Frank's project or Cy and Victoria's input. Because I think that basically it's like a melting pot of ideas. And I think that Frank would agree that with more people sort of contributing their ideas to the project gets richer. Now, your question is mostly a question of authorship, which is slightly different. It's not really the creative process per se, but it's like it's a legal process so much. Now, I would say the same thing for Bilbao. I would say that Bilbao was very much, I would say without Tom Krenz, who was the director of the Guggenheim, for example, I think that his idea has shaped Bilbao in equal, if not as important ways as, say, some of Frank's idea, as well as some of the other people's idea.
However, Mr. Krenz or
yeah.
They're not artists. They're not artists. So they play a certain kind of role, client role. When it comes down to it, like Spielberg is the director of the film.
Well, that's
all the people collaborating, cinematographers and actors and all that. There is a central force of creativity that is driving.
Well, I would say that I think that is actually the one thing that I see. It's not really I would say this, and that might require a whole other lecture to elaborate on that particular theme. But I would say that one needs to think about what we do, or perhaps in particular to the way our authors work differently than the way that an artist work. So, because actually I do have a separate lecture to talk about that very specific point, that in fact in the way that we do our work, it's very much collaborative, and under the umbrella of, say, Frank's office. And I would say that on the other hand, I think that the work is really the outcome of a lot of people's creative effort. I would hold to that. I think it's different than being a painter or a sculptor. I mean, I can't speak for Spielberg, and I don't know how he works. But for the movie business, is not something that I know very well.
Is this different than other architectural offices?
I think that well, I haven't worked for Richard's office. I don't really know how other offices work. I think what is important to keep in mind, though, is that the notion of a singular authorship is sort of becoming more and more obsolete in the world that we live in today, actually, especially with the proliferation of communication technologies and so on and so forth. And the way that people work now, I think there's more and more this tendency to work together. And the outcome of the work is sort of more and more the effort and the product of a lot of people participating.
So the hierarchy is not as much
But on the other, I think that it's different in the art world when you have a painter and he supposedly have painted the painting, or the sculptor who supposedly has done the sculpture.
But I have to say, I don't know, we've talked about this personally, and I don't know if you're being slightly disingenuous here, Edwin. Maybe the reason why people are interested in this question is, A, there has been kind of a cult of the architect, the whole Ayn Rand idea. B, Frank is no slouch at playing up being the artist-architect amongst the other architects who are something else, okay? And promoting his personality as the artiste, who, you know, somehow can make something different and so on. And more recently, one does read, Frank will say, I depend very heavily on two guys, okay? But I don't hear Frank talking that much about collaboration. Do you?
I do.
Yeah?
I think it's important.
Well, undoubtedly, but I would just suggest to you that's part of the reason why there's such great curiosity in this subject. To put you on the spot. Yeah.
To boil it down a little bit, do you think you work in Frank Gehry's style, or would you have a different style if you had your own? Are you conscious of working his style?
Well, you should, maybe you should commission me or something, I'll let you know.
Well, this question comes from someone who's worked very closely with a very famous artist for many years, so what would you think?
I always worked in his style. I was not doing my own work or I can build it.
So you have to be conscious of someone else's style.
Yeah.
Speaking of style, when you work on a project as large as Mobile, and granted it's too large for one person to deal with, how do you go about splitting up certain areas of design to keep continuity of style throughout the piece? Would you say that, you know, team A will be doing light fixtures in this area, and team B will be doing like the lobby or the cafeteria, or is it very project-based, how you break up the labor?
Well, that was complicated. It was a large. They were like when it was under sort of full production, there were more than say 30 people or so in the team. So there was a very complicated communication procedure. I think that the issue in that particular project, now every project is different, I want to say, like in Condé Nast it was a very small team actually because it was a small project, so it was not so much a problem. In Bilbao, you're correct that basically the way that it was sort of broken up, the team was organized. Now after we finished the overall design, at that point you know what the building is supposed to look like. So that's important. And you know at that point that all the different surfaces and the elements are already in the computer. So that part is already done, so there's no question. Well, there might be minor question, but the big picture is already established. And that came from a centralized design team. And then the organization of the rest of the effort in terms of documenting the thing has something to do with how it's a slightly more technical consideration. It has to do with how we organize the construction documents, basically. And to put a long story short, without going into in details, it's not so dissimilar in the way that, say, Condé Nast was done, in the sense that, say, the metal pieces would be developed by a team. And, for example, the glass pieces would be developed by a team of people, and the interior would be developed by a team of people, and so on and so forth. So that the team of people who are doing the metal pieces would be incredibly familiar with what they're doing. And since we're all sitting in the same space together, you have a lot of dialogue, and it would be all taking information from the same kind of digital database. I think that's the issue. I mean, it is overly simplistic, but that's sort of basically how it worked in that effort. And I think that in a big building, that's the only way you can do it. Last one. Okay. I mean, the way that these office, the way that the office is organized, let's say if you look at magazine, the way that they would say it would be Frank Gehry and Associates, that's the name of the firm. And then basically the first one would be Frank, who would be principal in charge. That's usually how the project is organized. He's the owner of the firm, he owns the firm, so he's principal in charge. Then usually there's within our office there's a managing principal who is one of Frank's partners in terms of the business side of things, and what he does basically is to keep track of all the financial, contractual, and the logistics of the project, so to speak. And that would be then followed by either myself or this other guy in the office, Craig, who would be the project designer. So, and then the credit would go with the project architect, who would be, I think I showed you a picture of Chris, who was my project architect for Condé Nast. And basically the project architect's role would be to say to coordinate between our office and the army of consultants that would be required. So Chris is very much, or the project architect is very much sort of say my partner in terms of I would be sort of coordinating more our aesthetic or design intentions, and Chris would try to communicate this kind of stuff and package the information in such a way that it would be understandable to some of these, to the engineers and so on and so forth. And then working directly, say, with myself or Chris, would be a team of people who would be responsible for the model work, the drawings, and all that other stuff that would be our backups. And basically, that's how our office is organized. Yes.
I have a question about the forms. They really imply motion,
Mm-hmm.
motion like in time. Can you talk about that, or the interest in that in architecture? I mean, maybe that's a big subject.
It is. So I will talk about that briefly, maybe, but then that would be the last question.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we are interested in motion. And I think that a lot of the shapes are sort of related to that. We'd like to see, I think one of the interests from our point of view is that we'd like to see if we can sort of capture motion, like in the middle. It's like motion frozen kind of thing. And for example, yeah. And actually right now we're into some other similar kind of thing in a different direction. But that would be, it is a big subject to discuss, yeah.
So you said, you are the designer. So the way you describe the the architect actually related. The designer is really very, very important for the person to conceptual and maintain the focus in terms of the overall sense as compared to the way you describe the architect's role, right? That's what I heard.
No, I wouldn't quite. Well, I don't know if I understood your question, actually.
In that particular project, you or the other colleague played the role of designer. And then you said under designer, there's an project architect.
No, I didn't quite say that. I would say the project architect would be like my collaborator. As a team, me and the project architect would be responsible for different aspects of the project.
Okay, but I'm still trying to establish the fact that you distinguish between the project architect and the designer.
Just because we're different people. He's a different individual than me.
The word, I'm not trying to be picky about it, but the designer is a significant word we're using. It's a broader way of using the word designer, and a very important, almost felt like the way you described it was more important than architect.
Okay, well, no, I mean, would you like me to switch it? I could do that.
No, I mean, that's interesting for us because we're always talking about design.
But I think that the nature of designing is also different now, I think, than the way it used to be. And I don't really know what that really means yet. I think in our world, I think that the traditional definition probably requires rethinking, and that probably requires a whole different subject and time and place for that discussion.
So are you in charge of the music center? Are you in charge of the music center?
No, that was Frank.
Well, thank you very much, Edwin.
Okay.